there, my name is Julie Fei-Fan Balzer, and today I'm going to show you how to make a super cool stamped greeting card using your ScanNCut. So I want to create some paper masks from this stamp, which has a nice closed design, so I know the ScanNCut will be able to do that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take an ink pad and I'm just going to ink up my stamp like so, and then I'm going to stamp it onto a plain white piece of copy paper. And you'll notice I'm not using black ink, I'm using red ink. As long as you get a strong impression, it really doesn't matter what color the ink is. So now I'm ready to take this over to the ScanNCut and get cutting some masks. So I have my flower design loaded into my scanning mat. I'm going to go ahead and choose Scan and Scan to Cut Data and press that Start button. Now to create a paper mask, you really want the outline of your stamped image. So I'm just going to drag this in so I catch a nice tight image, and I'm going to take a peek to make sure it's exactly what I want, and it is. It looks great. So then I'm ready to hit OK. Save, and we're going to save it right into the machine. And now, once it has saved and told me what it's saving as, we are ready to cut a lot of masks. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the home button to go back home. I want to unload my scanning mat. I'm going to choose Pattern, Save Data. There is my machine, which you'll recall we saved the mask to right there. Okay. Now I want to make it so that there's obviously more than one. That's the whole point of having the ScanNCut, so you have multiples of it. So why don't we make there be, let's say, 9, okay? So I'm just going to arrange these 9 onto my canvas so that they are obviously not on top of each other, and they're all going to cut. Now we're going to cut this out of copy paper, so I want to give you a trick or a hint, which is you can use a low tack mat, which works great for something like copy paper, but one of the things I do is I take an old mat that's not that sticky anymore. It still has enough adhesive to keep the paper down, but it's not so super sticky that this copy paper is not going to make it onto make it off of the mat rather. So I'm just going to smooth it down with my hand like so. And this is true if you're using tissue paper or deli paper, anything really thin. Then I'm going to go ahead and load it into the machine. And I can make any blade adjustments that I might need to. And then I can hit OK and cut. And we're ready to cut out those masks. I'm going to go ahead and unload my mat, and you will notice that my copy paper is not permanently stuck to this mat because, again, by using a mat that had a little bit of something, you know, on it, fuzz and stuff. And now I can just go ahead and pull off all of my paper masks, which you can see right here, and take them over to my desk to get them ready to use. So now that we have our masks, we are ready to start making our cards. So I'm here with this is just a sheet of regular white, plain, smooth cardstock. And I'm going to take that same stamp that we masked, and I'm going to use 2 different colors of ink. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put yellow on part of it, and then I'm going to put red on the other part of it. And I can see where the ink is based on what's shiny on the stamp. Then I'm going to go ahead and stamp it right where I want it. This one I'm happening to put right down in the middle, but you could put it anywhere you wanted, okay? And then I'm just going to repeat this process of doing the yellow, which obviously is turning orange because it's mixing with the red, which is the most recent color that I had on there, but that's fine. And I'm going to offset these slightly. And by offset, I mean I'm going to do rows of them, but notice they're not completely in line. They're slightly separate. So I'm going to go ahead and keep stamping and just repeating over and over. And now you can see why we cut tons of masks. Now, masking is a very common technique that people use in stamping all the time. And it's a great technique, but the thing I've always hated about it is, like, if you do a design like this that has, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9 of these things, you have to cut a bajillion of these by hand. And frankly, that's just a huge pain in the batola. So I much prefer to be able to use my ScanNCut to cut all those paper masks so I don't have to think about it. And you can see all this pretty color variation that's coming up now, where the 2 inks are sort of mixing and matching and all that kind of stuff. Now here's one hint that I always use whenever I'm stamping. which is if you want to have a real look like a pattern as opposed to something that, like, let's say looks stamped, go off the edges. I say that all the time to people, and I think it's, really, really important to just go right off those edges so that it looks like the pattern is continuing past. And that's another reason that I work on top of a piece of blotter paper, which you can see here, which is great because I can incorporate it into my artwork later. I can do whatever. And again, I'm going to go off the edges, not just at the top and the bottom, but also if the pattern were to continue, where would the next flower be? And even just that tiny little bit is really important to making this pattern look fabulous. And that should always be our goal when we're crafting, right? Total fabulosity. So I'm going to go ahead, stamp it, and then I can just stamp off onto my paper and close up my ink pads. Okay, so now I have this basic thing here, which is really cool, and I want to put the background in now. And you're saying, how are you going to put the background in right now? You know, you've already done all this stuff, and that's where the masks come in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the mask, and notice that this stamp, and this is just an easy way for me to line it up, has a tiny little notch in it. So I just look for the tiny notch here, and I'm ready to line it up. But I want my masks to stay put, so I'm going to take a very small amount of adhesive. I recommend that you use a removable adhesive or something that's like a dot adhesive, and put a, minuscule tiny amount, because all you want to do is just hold that mask down for a little while, so that, but you don't want it to be permanently there or anything like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply all of these masks, and then we'll get to the next layer of stamping. So now you can see I've got everything nicely masked off and everything's staying in place, and the mask perfectly fits the stamp even with that little notch. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a background stamp and I'm going to go ahead and ink it up with some ink just like this, and I'm going to turn this to face me a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp right at the edge, again going off slightly, because as I've mentioned before, it makes a huge difference to it seeming like an overall pattern. So I'm going to continue to stamp down, making these small circle stamps end up looking like a much larger stamp because I'm aligning them up so that it's set after set that's going to go right down that edge. Okay, now when I get to the center, I'm actually going to do something a little bit, well, tricky is the wrong word, but I'm going to do something kind of fun. So this half of the stamp is the stamp that's going to go against this, and this half is going to go against that white side. So I'm actually going to do somewhat similar to what we did before. I'm going to take one color of blue ink pad on one side, and I'm going to take another color of blue ink pad on the other side, and they may mix a little bit in the middle, which will also be a cool look, but I'm going to go ahead and line it up with the previous one just like that so you can see. And what will happen is you'll see I've got one color going into another color, and this is just another great way to expand the look of your stamps by mixing your colors and not being afraid of everything getting all mushy. The other thing is, because I'm using two blues, I know they're going to look beautiful together, so that's great. So let me just finish stamping this up. The only thing I'll say is that for that last row, I bet you can guess what I'm going to do, which is I am going to make it be, if you said all blue, the other blue, you were right. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So let me finish this up. So I'm a huge fan of more is more, and what that means is put more on it. So I'm actually going to add another stamp. I have this little dot stamp, and I'm going to add in a light green ink to the mix, because blue and green are very companionable, and I think they'll go together well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for some places where I can sort of place it where the circles meet. So I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm not planning it out. I'm just kind of randomly feeling my way in terms of what feels like a spot that this should land on, and I'm just trying to vary it up. So I'm going to go ahead and keep stamping it out until I've covered as much territory as I feel like I should. Okay, so right now you're probably thinking that this looks fine, Julie, but I'm not sure what's going on. Well, this is it. This is the moment. This is the big, exciting reveal, so I hope you're as excited as I am. So I'm going to start to pull off the paper masks. And if any adhesive, by the way, is left here, just roll it off with your fingers. But I'm just going to start to pull off the masks, and as you can see, that area of white and beautiful color is perfectly preserved. I think this is the coolest part. It gets me so excited that I was able to do this really cool technique, super easy, and made so easy, of course, with the ScanNCut cutting millions of these masks for me with no problem. Okay, so now we're almost ready. We're just going to put together the rest of the card. And what I did is, you can see right here, I just have a little tag, which I did some more stamping on with a stamp that looks like this. I did some alphabet stamps to say thank you. And I have a card base here, which is slightly larger. This is 5 by 7, and my piece of paper is just under 5 by 7. So all I'm going to do is take some adhesive, adhere it on here, take my tag, adhere it on here, and look at that fabulous, amazing stamped and masked card in no time at all. So I hope that you will use your ScanNCut with all your stamps for all kinds of cool masking. Thanks so much for watching. For more tips, tricks, and tutorials, be sure to visit my blog at balzerdesigns.typepad.com, and don't forget about the ScanNCut website at scanncut.com.